left to die on deserted planet, until the human found her. Lyra opened her eyes to a sky painted in harsh shades of red and orange. The twin suns of the planet blazed down mercilessly, making the surface shimmer with heat. She groaned, struggling to sit up, her body aching from hours of crawling across the rocky desert. Around her the landscape stretched endlessly, a vast wasteland of jagged cliffs and rolling dunes. She knew she had been left alone. Her crew had assumed she could not survive. Her spacecraft lay in ruins a few meters away, half buried in the sand. Its hull was scorched, metal twisted, and glass shattered. Lyra's fingers trembled as she touched the remains of her communicator. It was useless, smashed beyond repair. She had no way to signal for help. She had no choice but to survive on her own. The first day was the hardest. The heat was unbearable and water was scarce. She searched every crevice, every small depression in the rocks, hoping to find a hidden pool or a trickle of moisture. Some of the desert's creatures were small and harmless, but others were dangerous, moving with a speed and silence that made them deadly hunters. She had already seen the tracks of a predator larger than her, and she kept moving, never staying in one place for long. By night, the temperature dropped drastically. Lyra huddled in the shadow of a rock formation, wrapping herself in a thermal blanket salvaged from her ship. She kept her log running on a small device, her only connection to sanity. Day 1, still alive. The heat is unbearable. Water is low. No sign of anyone. I have to keep moving. She spoke softly, her voice almost lost in the empty desert. Her words were not meant for anyone but herself, yet writing them gave her a strange comfort, a feeling that she still existed somewhere beyond the planet. Days blurred into nights. She rationed what little supplies she had left, hunting small animals with improvised traps and drinking from the occasional water pocket she discovered in rocky crevices. Each meal was a reminder that she could survive, but also a reminder of how alone she truly was. She explored the area around her ship, trying to understand the planet. It was strange, almost lifeless in appearance, but the desert was not empty. Strange plants with translucent leaves grew near the canyon edges, and some small, glowing insects moved in patterns that suggested intelligence. Lyra noted everything carefully, documenting her observations for the record, though she knew it might never reach anyone. The loneliness was a weight heavier than the sun above. She often spoke aloud to herself, rehearsing conversations that would never happen. She imagined her crew returning, apologizing, explaining their actions. But reality always returned with the wind, harsh and unforgiving, reminding her that she was alone. One afternoon, a sudden storm appeared on the horizon. Sand whipped across the desert in blinding sheets. Lyra scrambled to find shelter, her vision stinging with every gust of wind. She found a small overhang in a cliff, barely large enough to hide under, and held herself against the rock, trying to shield her eyes. The storm lasted for hours, relentless in its intensity, and when it finally passed, she was exhausted, her body covered in cuts and bruises. As she lay on the rocks trying to catch her breath, she noticed something strange, a faint glimmer in the distance. At first, she thought it was another trick of the sun on the sand, another hallucination born of fatigue and hunger. But the glimmer remained steady, and her heart began to race. Could it be a ship, a rescue? She forced herself to stand, scanning the horizon. The object was far, too far for her to identify clearly, but it moved against the wind, descending slowly. Hope, long buried under despair, stirred in her chest. She remembered all the nights she had told herself she was doomed, that she would never see another living being again. And now, perhaps, that was about to change. She struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain in her limbs, and began moving toward the distant glimmer. Hours passed, and the sun began to sink toward the horizon. The ship, or whatever it was, grew larger, more distinct. She could see its shape now, sleek, compact, designed for exploration. Her heart pounded as she waved her arms, calling out, though she doubted the wind carried her voice very far. Then she heard a sound unlike anything she had heard on the planet, a hum of engines, low and steady, cutting through the silence of the desert. The ship landed with a soft thud, kicking up sand around it. A door opened and a figure emerged. Lyra squinted, trying to make sense of it. The being was tall, humanoid, but distinctly human. His suit was rugged, designed for survival, not show. A helmet reflected the dying sunlight, but she could see determination in the stance of the figure. Lyra's voice caught in her throat. She had almost given up, almost resigned herself to the planet's harsh grip. But here was someone someone who might save her. She staggered forward, calling out again. The human approached cautiously, scanning the environment as if he expected danger from every shadow. "Are you alone?" he called, his voice calm but commanding. Lyra nodded, too exhausted to speak. He removed his helmet, revealing a kind but focused face. "I'm Captain Eli," he said. "I got your signal, you're safe now, let's get you out of here." Lyra's relief was overwhelming. She collapsed onto the sand, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in days, perhaps weeks, she allowed herself to feel hope, to feel gratitude, to feel that survival was no longer just a dream. Eli knelt beside her, offering water and assessing her condition with professional efficiency. Over the next few hours, Eli helped her back to his ship. He moved with a combination of human ingenuity and care, using simple tools to stabilize her injuries and improvise a temporary shelter within the ship's cargo hold. Lyra watched, amazed, as he solved every problem with practical intelligence and calm determination. Where she had relied on technology alone, he relied on creativity, adaptability, and courage. As night fell, the twin suns of the planet disappeared, replaced by a sky full of stars. Lyra sat beside Eli in the ship, staring out at the vast desert. I thought no one would ever come," she whispered. Eli nodded, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Humans have a way of showing up when things seem impossible," he said. "We don't give up easily." For the first time in days, Lyra felt a spark of warmth, not from the suns above, but from the presence of another being who cared enough to save her. The desert was still vast, still dangerous, but she no longer felt trapped. With Eli here, survival was possible. The night passed slowly. Lyra and Eli shared minimal conversation, mostly logistical: how to repair her equipment, how to find water, how to plan for the next leg of her journey. But even in silence, a bond was forming, one built on trust and mutual respect. Lyra began to understand something she hadn't realized before. Humans were resilient in a way that transcended technology. They adapted, improvised, and faced danger with courage. By morning, Lyra felt stronger. She helped Eli repair parts of her ship, learning from his methods. Together, they rigged a system to extract water from the desert air and set up a rudimentary shelter that could withstand the planet's harsh conditions. She marveled at the human ability to take nothing and turn it into something life-sustaining. As the sun rose, painting the desert in shades of gold and red, Lyra stood beside Eli at the edge of the canyon. The planet still stretched endlessly before them, harsh and unforgiving, but for the first time it did not feel hopeless. There was a path forward. There was survival, and there was hope. Lyra smiled faintly, feeling a new determination rise within her. The human who had found her was not just a rescuer, he was a teacher, showing her that even in the bleakest circumstances, life could persist. Together, they would face the desert, explore the unknown, and perhaps uncover secrets that had long been buried beneath the sands. She did not yet know what lay ahead, but for the first time, she believed that she might not just survive, but thrive. And all because a human had come when no one else would. The sun rose slowly over the red desert, casting long shadows across the dunes and rocky cliffs. Lyra stood beside Eli, still marveling at how a human could remain so calm in such a harsh environment. She had spent days alone, terrified of every gust of wind, every moving shadow, and yet here he was, scanning the horizon as if he were walking through a garden. "We need to move," Eli said, his voice steady. "There are resources deeper in the canyon, and we can set up a more secure shelter there. If we wait, the storms will catch us again." Lyra nodded, her legs still stiff from the previous day, but determination burned in her chest. For the first time, she felt part of a team, part of something bigger than her own struggle to survive. Together, they began walking toward the canyon's mouth, careful not to draw attention from the planet's predators. The terrain was unforgiving. Sharp rocks tore at their boots, and loose gravel made every step dangerous. Eli moved with a grace that Lyra found remarkable, navigating the land as though he had done this before, though she knew humans had only recently begun exploring these remote regions. She followed his lead, trying to mimic his movements, trusting his instincts. Hours passed, and the canyon grew closer. The walls rose high above them, offering some protection from the wind and sun. Small pools of water had collected in depressions along the way, and Eli guided Lyra to each one, teaching her how to test it for safety. He used a small filtration device, simple in design, yet effective. Lyra marveled at how human tools could be so practical, relying not on advanced alien technology, but on cleverness and adaptability. As they moved, Lyra began to notice patterns in the desert that she had missed before. Small animal tracks led to hidden water sources. Certain plants indicated underground moisture. Eli pointed these out, explaining that humans often relied on observation and intuition to survive, rather than complex calculations. Lyra realized that in her own species, survival often depended on technology and formulas, while humans seemed to trust their minds and senses. By late afternoon, they reached a natural alcove in the canyon, a sheltered space large enough to serve as a temporary base. Eli immediately set to work, assembling a makeshift shelter from parts of Lyra's damaged ship and supplies he carried. Lyra assisted, learning how he used simple materials creatively, reinforcing weak points and creating a ventilation system to keep the air cool. Once the shelter was secure, Eli prepared a small meal from dried rations, sharing some with Lyra. She ate slowly, savoring the food and the moment. "You make this look easy," she said, watching him as he worked. Eli smiled faintly. "It's not easy. But humans have learned to survive by solving problems step by step. Even in places where no one else thinks they can, that's what keeps us alive." Lyra considered his words, feeling a mixture of admiration and curiosity. She had seen humans described in her studies as fragile, emotional, and unpredictable. Yet here was proof of their resilience, their courage, and their resourcefulness. She realized that perhaps humans were underestimated in the galaxy, dismissed by advanced species because they lacked certain technology, yet they made up for it in determination and creativity. That night, the canyon offered a rare sense of safety. The wind howled outside, but inside the shelter, Lyra felt a calm she had not known for weeks. She and Eli shared stories of their past experiences. Lyra spoke of her research expeditions and the species she had studied, while Eli told of human exploration missions, the dangers they faced, and the lessons they had learned. Despite their differences, a bond grew between them, built on trust, respect, and mutual reliance. Sleep came slowly. Lyra lay awake, listening to the hum of the small filtration device Eli had rigged. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine leaving the planet alive, perhaps even thriving. The thought was intoxicating. She had spent so long preparing for death that the idea of life felt almost foreign. The next morning, Eli woke her early. "We need to explore farther," he said. "There may be other resources, maybe even a safe place to call home for a few days, but we must move carefully. The desert is alive in ways we don't fully understand." They set out, traveling deeper into the canyon system. Lyra noticed the changes immediately. The air grew cooler, and small streams trickled down from cracks in the cliffs. Strange plants flourished in hidden nooks, and tiny creatures scurried among the rocks. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps this planet was not as barren as it seemed. Perhaps life had simply adapted to remain hidden, waiting for those patient and clever enough to discover it. As they moved, danger emerged. A massive creature covered in thick armored scales appeared from a narrow passageway. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and its movements were slow but deliberate. Lyra froze, instinct screaming at her to run. Eli, however, remained calm. He whispered to her, explaining how the creature relied on vibrations to detect movement, and guided her to stay low, moving silently along the shadows. Together, they evaded the creature, using natural cover and careful timing. Lyra's heart pounded, but she marveled at Eli's composure, at the way he solved the problem in real time, using intellect, observation, and courage. When the creature finally disappeared into the canyon, Lyra allowed herself a quiet laugh, relieved but exhilarated. Hours later, they found a hidden pool fed by a small underground spring. The water was cool and fresh, a rare treasure in the desert. Eli set up a simple filtration system, and Lyra drank deeply, feeling strength return to her body. "This is incredible," she said, staring at the water. "I never thought I'd see anything like this here." Eli shrugged, smiling faintly. "The universe is full of surprises. Humans just have a habit of finding them." As the day went on, they explored further, discovering strange rock formations and ancient markings etched into the cliffs. Lyra studied them carefully, recognizing patterns that suggested an extinct civilization had once lived here. She pointed out details to Eli, who listened with genuine interest. "You have an eye for details," he said. That will help us survive here. Together, they mapped the canyon, marking safe areas, water sources, and potential dangers. Lyra realized that with Eli's guidance, she was learning not only to survive, but to thrive in a place she once thought deadly. The partnership was transforming her understanding of life, resilience, and the power of ingenuity. That evening, a second storm approached. Unlike the first, this one was larger, more violent. They hurried back to their shelter, working together to reinforce it with extra materials and sandbags Eli had improvised. The wind roared, sand and debris hitting the canyon walls with thunderous force. Lyra clung to the shelter, grateful for the skills Eli had taught her. Without him, she would have been exposed, defenseless against nature's fury. Inside the reinforced shelter, they waited out the storm. Rain and sand mixed, washing over the canyon and reshaping the landscape. Lyra marveled at how humans could face such adversity with patience and calm. Even in the face of overwhelming danger, Eli had remained composed, analyzing each problem and finding solutions. It was a lesson in resilience she would never forget. When the storm finally passed, they emerged to a transformed canyon. Some areas had been washed away, others revealed hidden pools and caves previously concealed by sand and debris. "Look at this," Eli said, pointing to a narrow opening in the cliff. "We might be able to use it as a longer-term shelter, more protected than what we had." Lyra nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. The storm, destructive as it had been, had also uncovered new opportunities. She realized that survival was not just about avoiding danger. It was about adapting, learning, and using every challenge as a chance to grow stronger. They explored the new opening, discovering a series of interconnected caves with freshwater pools and small bioluminescent plants that provided light. Lyra's excitement grew. Here was a safe base, a place to rest, recover, and plan the next stage of their journey. Eli set up a perimeter marking areas where they could find food and water, and creating a basic security system using simple mechanical devices. Lyra assisted, learning quickly from his methods. She marveled at how humans could create solutions with minimal resources, relying on logic, observation, and creativity rather than brute force or advanced technology. As night fell, Lyra and Eli sat by one of the pools, reflecting on the day's events. "You've taught me more in 2 days than I learned in years of studying alien worlds," Lyra said, her voice filled with awe. "Humans, you're remarkable." Eli smiled, shaking his head. "We're not perfect. We make mistakes, fail, and sometimes get lucky, but we don't give up." "That's what counts." Lyra thought about her previous experiences, the times she had faced impossible odds and nearly given in to despair. She realized that human perseverance was not just about physical strength. It was about mindset, courage, and an unshakable belief that no challenge was insurmountable. She knew that with Eli by her side, she had a chance to survive this planet, to explore its secrets, and perhaps even discover more about herself than she had ever imagined. The Red Desert, once a symbol of hopelessness, now seemed full of possibility, waiting for those brave enough to face its trials. And as they rested under the twin sun's fading light, Lyra felt a spark of hope stronger than ever. With a human beside her, she was no longer just surviving. She was learning, growing, and daring to dream of life beyond the desert. Lyra woke to a soft glow filling the cave. The bioluminescent plants Eli had discovered cast gentle blue and green light across the walls, giving the space a serene, almost magical feeling. She stretched, feeling her muscles sore but alive, and glanced over at Eli, who was already examining a map of the canyon system. He looked up and smiled, a faint spark of pride in his eyes. "We need to plan the next move," he said. "The canyon system is larger than we thought. If we explore it carefully, we might find more water, food sources, maybe even signs of who lived here before." Lyra nodded. The excitement she felt was a new emotion, almost foreign after weeks of isolation. The canyon that had once seemed deadly now held possibilities, and with Eli by her side, she felt capable of exploring them. She adjusted her gear and followed him deeper into the cave system, their footsteps echoing softly. The caves twisted and turned, sometimes narrowing so that they had to move single file, sometimes opening into chambers filled with small pools of water and strange plant life. Lyra's curiosity was relentless. She examined every rock formation, every plant, every marking on the walls. Some were natural, but others seemed deliberately shaped, symbols carved in patterns she could not yet understand. Eli observed her silently for a moment. "You're noticing things most people would miss," he said. "That attention to detail, it's why we'll survive here." Lyra smiled faintly. "I learned to notice patterns a long time ago. Out here, patterns can mean life or death." As they moved further, they heard a faint rumble beneath their feet. Lyra froze, her heart racing, but Eli raised a hand. "Stay calm," he whispered. "It's probably just shifting rocks or underground water. We'll move slowly." The ground trembled slightly again, and small rocks slid from the ceiling. They took careful steps, Eli leading, Lyra following, until the tremors stopped. Then they saw a narrow opening leading to a lower chamber. Eli knelt and inspected it. "This might be an underground spring," he said. "If it is, we can collect water and maybe find food sources nearby." They carefully descended, Eli guiding Lyra through tight spaces and jagged rocks. The chamber opened into a large underground pool, fed by a small waterfall trickling from a crack above. The air was cool and damp, a sharp contrast to the desert heat above. Lyra knelt by the water and cupped her hands, drinking deeply. The water was fresh, sweet even, and she felt energy returning to her body. "This is incredible," she whispered. "I never imagined something like this could exist here." Eli smiled. "Humans have a habit of finding life where others see none. That's why we keep exploring." They spent the next few hours exploring the chamber. Small creatures skittered along the walls, and some of the plants glowed softly. Eli collected samples carefully, showing Lyra how to do the same without damaging the delicate ecosystem. Lyra marveled at his patience and precision. Humans, she realized, had a way of adapting to new environments that went beyond survival. They learned, observed, and thrived. As they worked, Lyra noticed markings along the walls of the chamber. They were faint, almost worn away by time, but she could see patterns, symbols, and lines that suggested intelligent design. Her pulse quickened. "These aren't natural," she said. "Someone was here before us, long ago." Eli knelt beside her, examining the markings. "Humans have discovered ruins like this on other planets," he said. "They tell stories, record knowledge, sometimes warn of dangers. We need to be careful but also curious. There could be valuable information here." They spent hours documenting the markings, sketching them, and taking careful notes. Lyra's excitement grew with each symbol she deciphered. She realized that these markings were not random. They told a story of a civilization that had lived in harmony with the planet, using its resources without destroying them. It was a civilization advanced in knowledge, yet humble in existence. Night fell and the cave glowed softly under the bioluminescent plants. They made a small camp near the pool, using collected rocks to build a fire. Eli cooked a simple meal, rationed carefully, and they ate in companionable silence, both lost in thought. Lyra reflected on the contrast between her past life among technologically advanced species and this remote planet. Out here, survival depended not on power or dominance, but on intelligence, observation, and cooperation. The next morning, they continued their exploration, following a narrow passage that led deeper into the underground network. The air grew warmer, and the sound of running water echoed faintly ahead. Suddenly, they entered a massive chamber, much larger than anything they had seen. Stalactites hung from the ceiling, and a shallow river ran through the middle, sparkling in the glow of plants and rocks. Lyra gasped. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Eli nodded, equally impressed. "And full of opportunities," he said. "Water, food sources, shelter. We can make this place our base for a while, study it, and learn from it." They began exploring the riverbanks, finding edible plants and small fish in the water. Eli fashioned simple traps, and Lyra learned quickly, understanding the logic behind his methods. Together, they worked efficiently, preparing a sustainable way to live in the cave for the coming days. While working, Lyra noticed unusual patterns in the riverbed, rocks arranged deliberately, forming shapes that suggested intelligent placement. "These aren't natural," she said. "Someone or something arranged them, maybe as markers, maybe as part of their culture." Eli examined them. "It seems like a guide of some sort. We should follow it carefully. It might lead to more clues about who lived here or to something important." They followed the patterns upstream, moving cautiously. After several hours, they reached another chamber, smaller and darker than the previous ones. The walls were covered in markings similar to those in the first chamber but more detailed, depicting creatures, tools, and landscapes. Lyra ran her fingers over the symbols, feeling a connection to the beings who had once inhabited the planet. These people, they studied their world, she said softly. They understood the desert, the caves, the water. They thrived here without destroying it. Eli nodded. Humans could learn a lot from them, but we also have our own way of surviving. Together, we can combine knowledge, strength, and creativity. As they explored, a low rumble echoed through the chamber. Rocks shook and dust fell from the ceiling. Lyra's heart raced, but Eli remained calm. "Stay close," he said. "It's probably a minor quake. The planet shifts sometimes. We'll move carefully." They navigated through the trembling rocks, following the river as it twisted deeper into the underground network. Eventually, they emerged into a chamber that opened into a vertical shaft leading upward. Sunlight spilled in from above, illuminating the walls with golden light. Eli examined the opening. "This could be an exit to the surface or to another level of caves," he said. "We need to climb carefully." Using ropes and simple climbing tools, they ascended, moving slowly and deliberately. Lyra felt her muscles burn, but she was determined. Every step brought her closer to understanding the planet, to surviving, and to learning from the human beside her. At the top, they emerged onto a plateau overlooking a vast canyon. The desert stretched endlessly, but from this vantage point, Lyra could see hidden oases, smaller caves, and strange formations she had never noticed before. Her mind raced with possibilities. The planet was not empty. It was alive, full of secrets waiting to be discovered. Eli looked at her and smiled. "See, I told you, there's more here than meets the eye, and together we can explore it safely." Lyra felt a surge of gratitude. She had been left to die, abandoned by her own people, and yet here she stood, alive, learning and growing because of a human's courage and ingenuity. She realized that the galaxy underestimated humans. They were not the strongest, the fastest, or the most advanced technologically, but they had something far more powerful: resilience, adaptability, and a will to survive against all odds. That evening, they set up camp on the plateau, overlooking the canyon below. Eli built a small fire, and they ate a simple meal, watching the sun set behind the jagged cliffs. Lyra reflected on everything she had learned: the cave systems, the markings, the plants, the water sources, and above all, the lessons from Eli. Humans had a way of turning hopeless situations into opportunities, of finding solutions where others saw only problems. As night fell, Lyra lay on a flat rock beside Eli, staring up at the stars. She thought about the future, the exploration yet to come, the dangers they would face, and the mysteries hidden beneath the desert sands. For the first time, she did not feel fear. She felt excitement, determination, and hope. With Eli beside her, she knew survival was not just possible. It was certain, as long as they faced the challenges together. The desert planet, once a symbol of death and despair, had become a place of discovery, learning, and triumph. And Lyra knew that the human who had found her would continue to teach her, guide her, and inspire her in ways she had never imagined. Tomorrow, they would explore further. They would uncover more secrets, confront more dangers, and learn more about the resilience of humans and the possibilities of the planet. But tonight, under the vast starry sky, Lyra allowed herself to rest, to dream, and to believe in life once more. The first light of dawn painted the plateau in soft gold and red. Lyra stretched, feeling the soreness in her muscles from the climb the day before. She looked over the canyon, tracing the hidden oases and cave entrances that promised secrets yet to be discovered. Eli stirred beside her, already scanning the landscape with a small binocular device. His focus was steady, methodical, but his eyes held that same quiet excitement she had come to admire. "We need to move deeper into the canyon today," Eli said. "There's something here, I can feel it. The planet is not empty, and I think the markings we found before lead to something important." Lyra nodded, adjusting her pack. She felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with caution. She had learned that while the canyon could provide life, it could also bring danger. Together, she and Eli had survived storms, creatures, and treacherous terrain. Now they were pushing further into the unknown, seeking answers about a civilization long gone. They followed the river upstream, keeping close to the water for guidance and safety. Lyra noticed strange formations along the walls, symbols she had seen before, etched deeper into stone and arranged in repeating patterns. Some seemed to depict creatures, others tools, and some showed what looked like human-like figures interacting with machines. "These are more advanced than the previous ones," she said, pointing to a series of complex markings. Someone here understood the planet and its resources in great detail. They were intelligent, careful, and organized. Eli studied them carefully. Intelligence like this can survive only if it is adaptable. Humans are the same way. That's why we can survive in places no one expects us to. He paused, looking at her. And why I knew you'd be able to follow me through this safely. Lyra felt a surge of respect. She had seen many beings in the galaxy, some far older and technologically superior, yet Eli's words carried a truth she could feel in her bones. Humans had an adaptability, a courage, and an ingenuity that few could match. They survived by thinking, observing, and solving problems on the fly, not by relying solely on technology or power. They entered a larger cavern, its ceiling high and jagged. The walls were carved with intricate patterns, more symbols than Lyra had ever seen. In the center of the cavern was a platform, raised slightly, made from smooth, polished stone. Strange crystals glimmered in the light, reflecting across the walls in a dazzling display. Lyra approached it cautiously, marveling at the engineering and artistry that had created it. "This is incredible," she whispered. "This civilization, they were advanced, but they lived in harmony with the planet. They didn't destroy it, they understood it." Eli nodded, kneeling to examine a series of etched grooves on the platform. "Look at these patterns," he said. "They're not random. They must have been instructions or a guide for something. Perhaps a mechanism, a tool, or even a machine. We should investigate." Lyra helped him decipher the grooves, matching them with markings she had seen elsewhere in the caves. Slowly, a picture began to form. This platform was part of a system, a device built to interact with the planet's environment. Water, minerals, energy, everything was connected. Whoever had built it had understood the balance between nature and technology. Suddenly, a faint vibration passed through the floor. Lyra froze. "What was that?" she asked, her voice tense. Eli placed a hand on the platform, testing its stability. "It's connected to the planet somehow. Maybe pressure or seismic activity activates it. We need to be careful, but I think we can use it." Together, they worked to activate the device. Eli's hands moved quickly, adapting their movements based on the symbols and grooves, while Lyra provided careful calculations, cross-referencing her observations with the markings in the walls. Slowly, the platform shifted, and a low hum filled the chamber. Crystals around the room glowed brighter, and water from the underground river began to flow through channels they had not noticed before, illuminating hidden sections of the cavern. Lyra gasped. "It's like they left a system to maintain the planet. They designed it to protect and sustain life." Eli smiled, pride in his eyes. "And we're the ones who can understand it and use it. Humans have a way of seeing patterns, figuring out systems, and making them work. That's why we survive where others fail." For hours, they explored the expanded cavern, discovering more mechanisms, hidden rooms, and safe areas where the civilization had stored knowledge and tools. Each discovery amazed Lyra further, but she also realized the potential danger. A single mistake could damage the system, perhaps even cause harm. Eli's calm, methodical approach gave her confidence that they could navigate it safely. As they worked, Lyra noticed faint movements near the far side of the chamber. Small creatures, possibly descendants of the original civilization's experiments or natural wildlife adapted to the caves, watched them with curiosity. Lyra held up a hand, signaling Eli to remain still. They observed quietly, careful not to provoke the creatures. Slowly, the animals retreated and the cave returned to silence. Night fell and they set up a small camp near the main platform. Eli cooked a simple meal, sharing rations and water. Lyra felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had been left to die, abandoned in a harsh desert, but now she was alive, exploring a hidden world and learning from a human who embodied resilience, ingenuity, and courage. "I never imagined I'd see something like this," Lyra said softly. "A civilization, a system to sustain life, and you saved me." Eli shook his head. "I didn't save you, we saved each other. Humans don't survive alone for long. We work together, adapt, and solve problems. That's why we can thrive." Lyra thought about everything she had experienced. The desert storms, the creatures, the caves, the ancient civilization, and realized how much humans' adaptability and determination had influenced her survival. She had seen advanced technology fail, civilizations collapse, but humans had a way of turning hopeless situations into opportunities. The next morning, they continued exploring, moving deeper into the system. They discovered a chamber that seemed to serve as a control hub, with channels connecting water sources, energy crystals, and ventilation systems. Eli and Lyra worked together to understand the mechanisms, testing small adjustments and observing their effects. Slowly, the system began to respond to their input, stabilizing water flow, illuminating new areas, and revealing hidden chambers filled with valuable resources. "This is amazing," Lyra said. "They created a self-sustaining ecosystem." "They respected the planet, and now we can continue it," Eli nodded. "And we'll use it carefully. Humans can adapt, learn, and improve systems like this. We have the patience and intelligence to understand balance." Hours later, as they rested near the main chamber, a distant rumble echoed through the canyon above. Lyra's heart raced. "Another storm?" she asked. Eli examined the walls and the channels of the system. "Possibly, but the platform and channels are holding. We can manage it if we stay calm and work together." The storm hit in the afternoon, winds howling and sand whipping through unseen cracks. But the cavern system they had uncovered proved resilient. Water flowed steadily, and the creatures that had retreated returned cautiously. Lyra and Eli worked together, reinforcing weak points and adjusting channels, ensuring that nothing was damaged. When the storm finally passed, the system had survived intact, and they had learned more about its functions than ever before. Lyra realized that humans were capable of not only surviving in harsh environments, but also improving and maintaining systems left behind by others. Their combination of intelligence, courage, and creativity allowed them to turn adversity into opportunity. By the next evening, they had fully mapped the underground system. Eli set up a small communication array using simple tools, enough to send a basic signal to nearby human colonies. Lyra watched, amazed at how humans could take minimal resources and solve complex problems. "Do you think they'll come?" she asked. Eli smiled. "If they do, it will be because humans persist. We don't give up. And if they don't, we can survive on our own. This system gives us everything we need." Lyra felt a sense of accomplishment and awe. She had been left to die on this deserted planet, abandoned and alone. But now, thanks to Eli and the human traits she had come to admire, she was not only alive but thriving. They had uncovered a civilization, stabilized a system, and discovered a way to live in harmony with the planet. That night, as they watched the stars from the cave entrance, Lyra reflected on the journey. She had learned that survival was not just about strength or technology, but about intelligence, adaptability, and determination. Humans embodied these traits in ways that few other species could. Where others saw hopelessness, they saw opportunity. Where others gave up, they persisted. Lyra knew that when she returned to the galaxy, she would tell the story of humans, of resilience, courage, and ingenuity. She would share how a single human, arriving at the right moment, had changed the course of her life. And she would honor the lessons she had learned. That intelligence combined with adaptability and courage combined with determination could overcome even the harshest challenges. As she drifted to sleep under the soft glow of the bioluminescent plants, Lyra felt hope stronger than ever. She was no longer alone. She was part of something greater, a partnership between species, a testament to human ingenuity and perseverance. The deserted planet that had once been a symbol of despair had become a place of life, discovery, and triumph. And for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to dream, not just of survival, but of adventure, discovery, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead with humans by her side.